In this video, we will talk about the process by which science is discovered. You've probably heard of the scientific method. First, let's define some terms. An observation is a descriptive account of a phenomenon. A hypothesis is a possible explanation for that phenomenon that is in agreement with all the known facts about that phenomenon. A hypothesis will be retained until there is evidence to disprove it, or it may be modified as new data are collected. Hypotheses are then used to make predictions on the outcome of a particular experiment. An experiment is a procedure designed to test a hypothesis. Experiments are carefully designed, including the establishment of appropriate controls. In a control experiment, we follow the same procedure as in the test experiment, but we leave the variable of interest unaltered. Controls allows us to verify that the results that we obtain from the experiment are caused by the variable we manipulated and not by other factors. Finally, the word theory has different meanings for scientific language as it does in everyday language. In science, the word theory has two meanings. First, it refers to a proposed explanation for a natural phenomenon. In the second meaning, theory refers to the group of concepts supported by careful observation. Scientific reasoning, and experimental evidence that explains the facts in some area of study. Scientific theories, according to the last definition, provide the framework for organizing a body of knowledge. A difference between the word theory in common language and how we use it in science is, for example, in common language, you may say that you have the theory that when a bird stands by your window, it will rain an hour later. In scientific language, that will not be called a theory. That statement will be called a hypothesis, which needs to be tested. The first step in scientific discovery is careful observation. For example, this morning you got in your car and your car didn't start. You noticed that the lights and the radio weren't turning on either. That is an observation. From that observation, you formulate a hypothesis. Your hypothesis is that your battery lost power. You predict then that if you replace the battery, your car will start. That leads you to the experiment in which you will replace the battery. So your test experiment is to replace the battery. You conduct that experiment, and then look what happens when you try to start the car after you replace the battery. If your car doesn't start after you replace the battery, that means that your hypothesis wasn't correct, and you need to reformulate your hypothesis and propose a new explanation to why your car didn't start. On the other hand, your car might start just as you had predicted, in which case your hypothesis seems to be correct, or is in agreement with what the results of your experiment show. However, before you can conclude that every time some car stops is because it needs to replace the battery, it requires multiple experimentation under multiple conditions before you can gather enough evidence and construct a theory. The results of experiments and observations can be used to construct models. Models fit the observations gathered on individual parts as provided by the reductionism approach, and then put them together and predict how they will behave as a single unit. For example, in this picture, we have the model of the DNA molecule constructed by James Watson and Francis Crick. They based their model on multiple observations and experiments on the chemistry and X-ray imaging of the DNA and its components.